Well, Ashley, thank you so much for being here with me on the Entrepreneurial Success Podcast. We're going to talk about something today that kind of just hits all of those touching points that I love talking about. But before we get there, why don't I hand over to you so you introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for having me. My name is Ashley DeLuca, and I am an email communication strategist that specifically uses conversational email marketing in order for you to be able to sell on autopilot using email marketing. And so, yeah, I'm all about creating intentional emails. I do the strategy, the copy, the implementation. Email is my jam. Email is a huge part of my life and what I'm passionate about.
I know. And when I saw that you said you wanted to talk about email marketing, I was like, yes, we've got to do this because this is something that I'm passionate about as well. And it is something that works if you know how to do it right, which is what you're going to share with us here today. Before we dive into that, tell us a little bit about your story. I like to call this your success story. How did you get started in your business and how did that kind of evolve to where you are now?
Oh my gosh, yes. So I actually started off when I was around 14 years old with library books bigger than I was. I was very much so into writing. At the time, I was writing macaroni and cheese stories to my little sister. And what ended up happening is I decided that I wanted to create my first blog. And I didn't want my blog to be like anybody else's blog. And so I wanted to custom create my template. So I ended up buying a laptop with babysitting money, got these library books, and started coding websites and these blogs and just really getting into the hang and the gist of all the things. So what ended up happening is I ended up going into college, got my first corporate job. I was like, I've made it. Like, this is what it's all about. I'm just going to climb the ladder. And I was a square peg in a round hole, completely and utterly. Not only did I just not really fit in necessarily with just like the type of culture, because I'm very customer focused, I'm very relationship. My brain thinks in simple ways. So like I can take a complicated process and make it simple. And a lot of times they were just very stuck with their complicated ways. And I was just like, this makes no sense to my brain. Like, why are we doing it this way? And so I got to the point where I ended up getting pregnant. And I had started my business originally at Panera with my best friend Cece, and she was just like, listening to me as I was like, I don't understand. Like, I know how to code websites, I know how to do social media, but no one will give me the opportunity. And she was like, why don't you just create your own? And I was like, wait, what? She's like, yeah, just create your own opportunity. Like, just go out there, create your websites, like go out there and just share your stuff. So I was doing Craigslist ads. Like that's originally where I started, is on Craigslist, just responding to ads, doing little website projects. There was some good, there was some bad. There was a lot of things that I learned in that process. And what ended up coming of that is basically giving me a foundation of a business that I then leaned into when I got pregnant. And so for me, I wanted to be able to stay at home with my little dude. And luckily he decided to go watch some PJ Masks while we're like doing this episode. Usually he would be over saying hi and like being part of the episode as well too, which is what I fully embrace over on my own podcast. And I want people to be able to see the balance and knowing that like you can do both, because that's what I wanted to do. And so that's when I fully decided to dive in, started off just doing hashtag all the things. I was like, listen, like I wanted to prove my husband right, that I could do this business. I could, be home with my little dude and do it all. So I literally did all the things. And I was just like, if I think I can Google and figure this out, like I'm going to do it. And I ended up, getting into email, started diving into that process. And I was just like, wow, there is such a room for improvement here. Like there's just all these emails, super transactional, super newsletter, me, never linked back to the person. And I was like, this is not how I want to communicate with my people, like at all. This is not my jam. This is not what I want to do. And so I ended up moving in and diving into creating this conversational email marketing method, just basically on accident, based off of just me going out there and being like, this is how I want to show up via email. And then I now teach that to my clients. I teach that through my book and all of the things that go along with it.
I love that. Let's talk a little bit about the email marketing side then, because this is where I think the audience, gets really excited to talk about email marketing. Some of the still in the beginning stages, some people are already, fluent with it. And you still get some of those people who are going like, oh, I know I need to do email marketing, but I want to do it the right way. And I find what you're doing is the right way. It's that pure, authentic way of doing it. So talk a little bit about how to build an intentional relationship with your audience.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the key word It's intentional. I think one of the biggest things that happens within the email space is email is like an afterthought, right? We're just like, we do all of our social media content planning, we plan out our podcast, we plan out the YouTube, and then we're just like, oh yeah, we have to send an email. So then we go through the process of sending an email out, and the email is just kind of like the show notes or the YouTube notes are just kind of half done. We're like, oh, just let me copy and paste this post and throw it in there. And then it says comment below, and you're just like, yeah, no, this is not like an authentic email. And so what ends up happening is we end up creating like a side relationship with our people, as opposed to just going fully all in and showing up with them on email. Now, I would say building an intentional relationship does not have to be time consuming. It's just about how you show up and the intentionality behind that. So it starts with consistency. It starts with choosing the consistency that makes the most amount of sense for you. For me, I, do a lot of weekly emails for me and my clients. If you don't have time to put together a weekly email that is, very much so just for your email, or if you take a repurpose post, repurpose it for email specifically and rewrite it, then do biweekly. Like, I'm here for it. Do monthly. I don't care. Like, just focus on that consistency of you sending out a quality piece of email content to your list and keeping with that consistency. So that's the first piece. The second piece is understanding the journey. And a lot of times we talk about customer journeys in terms of which just like, they go from social and then they go to this landing page and they go to this offer page and this OTO and da, 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 da. But for email, you also have to consider where your audience is at. And so when we have, and this is very common, when we have a gazillion freebies for all different levels, for all different pain points, and for all different things, we end up with a list of all of the peoples in all different levels wanting all different things from you. And so the best thing that you can do is keep yourself organized by having one primary opt-in that you start off with first that specifically links to your offering with a specific pain point. What ends up happening is, we create these opt-ins, and I've been there and done that. I've created quote opt-ins, and we get everybody and their grandma on our list, and it doesn't work. So you want to make sure you have one specific journey from opt-in to offer that makes the most amount of sense for the people you're trying to attract. So that way, when you go to plan your monthly content for your email side of things, it all flows. It all flows in terms of who you're talking to. You're talking to the same person all the time, and it just all creates this simplified way for you to make sure that when you're sending this content, you're creating that one-on-one relationship with them that feels that way because you were intentional from the get-go about how you attracted them in.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying there, because that whole intention behind it, makes it so much easier as well, just sending out the right content. And I've seen this time and time again. People get say, oh, I can do this, and I can say it about this, and I can say it's like, hold on a minute, that's way too much. Yeah, it's great for content, but that's way too much. It's not intentional. You're not directing it to the right audience, to your right clients. So I love the way you put it together as well. And it just comes back down to everybody's using the word niching down, being specific, being focused on who you want to work with. Who's that person, not people, who's that one person that you are talking to? And I think this is the other thing that I find as well when it comes to email content creation, is you're just talking to one person, and you just have to make them feel like you are talking to them, not to the entire world. So this is the other thing that I get so excited about. When it comes to emails, conversations are absolutely key, but there's conversations and there's profitable conversations. So from your point of view, how do you create those profitable conversations in your emails?
Oh my gosh, this is what I am so incredibly passionate about, because a lot of times, we have conversations with our email subscribers and they just don't go anywhere. Mm-hmm. The key is to create emails that are literal conversations. And this is how I do it. So basically the idea and the concept behind it is, when I go to write an email to my list, I want you to feel like I'm sitting right next to you, talking to you. And so what I'll do is there's kind of like a 3-part structure here. And so the very first piece of this is the you statement. And this you statement is specifically designed to be able to open that door for them to be able to be like, ooh, you. you, like I'm talking to you, right? And so a lot of times we start our emails off with, you won't believe what I did yesterday. Like that's also conversational. But when you start with a sentence that says you, it immediately is like you, me, like they correlate together and they start to intrigue the curiosity and the interest. Like, what are you talking about? And so what ends up happening is when I go to write my emails, I literally think about how you would respond to what I'm saying. And so when I go to write the content, it's very much so as if I was literally speaking it directly to you.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing is that people get stuck in storytelling mode. They get stuck in, oh, I'm going to educate mode. And those are all great ways. Like I love sharing stories. I love educating within my emails. But it really comes back to tone. I think tone is so incredibly important within your emails, but also within tone too, creating congruency in how you speak and how you show up in your email is also very incredibly important, because I want to make sure that the experience you're having with me in this email also is the same experience that you have over inside of my Instagram or DMs or live video. And so what ends up happening is that if someone's following me on Instagram and they see one of my videos or stories, and I talk the same way that I write my emails, they're going to like literally hear my voice as I'm talking. And so I think it's really important to do the you statement as you're talking through your content or your story, you know, whatever that middle section of your email is, making sure that you include little like parentheses with like little statements like, haha, I'm sure you can totally relate to this, right? Like just as if you're talking to that person, like eating coffee across the street or drinking coffee, right? Same concept. And then at the end, the CTA section needs to make sure that there's an actual correlation back to the content. So often the CTA is just like, oh yeah, and I have this offer. No, like makes sense to me. Like, why should I care about this offer? Why should I care about this YouTube video? Why should I care to listen to this podcast episode? Like, make it known why they should care based off the result or the outcome that comes from them digesting that content or taking advantage of the offer. And so I like to just spin it all back to my person. I like to spin my tone as if I'm having a conversation and really just making sure that like whatever I'm sharing makes sense for you. Now, there are times when it doesn't make sense for people, and that is totally okay, because I'm not here for everybody, right? Like it goes back to niching down, really just making sure that your message is directed to one person. But within that process as well too, it's really going to stick out specifically to those who really want to be part of your world and who are there for what you're serving.
Yeah, I love how you're saying it, because I find it very true as well. Striking a conversation in the emails has really propelled things forward for me when I started doing it. So I was doing everything wrong as well in the beginning, you know, dear sir, dear lady, you know, all of those, and being very formal, because coming from a corporate world, you know, that's how you have to be and that's how you have to show up. And then I just heard that, you know, you can just have a conversation and just write as if you're talking. Yes, of course, you know, make sure your spelling is correct and, you know, all of those things, but just write as if you're talking.
Yep.
And I thought, this is so weird, but I tried it anyway. Oh my goodness, the responses I got, the engagement I got, and I thought, this is brilliant. How come I didn't know about this earlier? But then I just kept on going with that. And it became so second nature that I sometimes have to stop myself where I write things. You know, when you apply for something, you've got to be formal. It's like, okay, let's keep that formal. Where you apply for, or when you write content, that's where you keep it conversational. But it's so second nature now, and I just love it. And the engagement is definitely there. And it's like you said, it's like you're sitting next to people and they could hear your voice as if you're right there telling them the story or going through this content with them. And I've even had people respond to me saying, oh my gosh, you know, it's like you're having a camera in my house and you were following me and you know exactly what I was doing and thinking. And this is so me, this relates to me. And I just love hearing those responses, because it means that they get it and I get it. And you can have that conversation and engagement. You can do it.
Yeah. And I'll even link this together and let me put the bow on top here, because here's the thing, like a lot of times we think that just having these conversations don't matter, and they do. They totally do. You replying back to your people, just as if you would apply to Instagram, matters. You going through the process of changing your tone to be more conversational and making them feel like they're having that conversation with you matters, because the thing is it lets down their guard. It's an additional touch point, but it's a more valuable touch point within that process, because you're going to be able to fly into the next seat, basically like, upgrading into a paid offer so much easier and faster, because they're going to have the trust. They're going to feel safe with you. They're going to feel like they know you, even on a broad level, right? You could send this email out to 500 people, and those 500 people are going to feel like you're their best friend based off of the way that you communicate and talk to them, and the congruency and the consistency that comes part of it. And that's why I love email so much, because of the way that you can really like spotlight that attention on the right people and provide that one-on-one interaction with them, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, just throughout this whole conversation, what I love about what you're saying, and this is the authentic part, is everything you say is about building a relationship. It's about showing up authentically. It's not about pitching. It's not about spamming people. It is just about really building relationships and trying to create a conversation, trying to help people, try and show up for them. So I love this conversation and how it's going. And I think, people still have the old stigma, because unfortunately it still does happen, where if you get onto an email list, you're going to be bombarded, you're going to be spammed, you're going to be pitched at. But if you are a business owner and you want to do it authentic in relation to who you are, to your brand, this is the way to do it. And this is why I love having this conversation with you, because it's so, so true. Now, the other thing I want to ask you is a question that I sometimes get as well, and I'm so glad you want to talk about this, is how to increase the open and the click rate on an email. Because let's face it, not everybody opens up your emails or clicks on the links, but how can you increase that? Because at least, we want to engage with people more. And the only way to do that is by getting them, number one, to open up an email.
Yes, 100%. Okay, so the cheat way, I call it the cheat way because it's literally the easiest way on the entire earth to get your opening click rates up in the matter of minutes, right? Is to clean your list, right? Like getting rid of the dead weight, getting rid of people who aren't even opening, sending them to spam, they just leave unread. It's really healthy. Like you want to have a healthy email list, because the thing is that so often we get caught up into the numbers of like, I want a 5K or 10K email list. But the amount of work that goes into keeping it clean, keeping it segmented and target is a lot, right? And so making sure that you have a clean list is first and foremost. And then the second piece behind this is, once you clean out the dead weight, you want to create, first of all, I say this all the time, but create consistency in your content. Like that is the biggest thing. Like I even have some cold subscribers I need to clean out, at the start of next quarter, because it happens, right? Like it's totally okay. You don't all have to be at my party. Like sometimes we get partied out, right? And so essentially you want to go through the process of remaining consistent if you haven't been. And then the other piece is understanding where these metrics actually come from and why they happen. And so for your open rate, it's 50% the relationship you have with the subscriber, and then 50% actually the subject line. And so, a lot of times we just focus all of the energy on the subject line, like it has to be perfect, it has to be this, it has to be that. But the biggest thing, even with some of my clients who have larger 5K, 10K lists, it came back to the relationship they had with the subscriber. Before I came in, a lot of them were spamming their list, or they had tons of emails, or there was one client that I worked with, which was very extremely adamant about like constant emailing and very much so more transactional versus relationship. And it was one of those things where her stuff kept climbing down, and she's like, I don't understand. You're supposed to be a pro at this. And I was like, yeah, like I'm a pro in the relationship field. Like if you want to create this relationship with people, like where they see your name and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to open it. Like that is what I do best. This like just pump and send like does not work. And it like was very much so something that she was like, oh, yeah, you're right. You're totally right. And then we switched it, and like everything started to turn back up again, which was awesome and perfect and amazing. And so understanding that piece of it is super important. And then for your subject lines, I recommend conversational ones. And the best way you can pull conversational ones is basically open-ended questions. You can also do something like, hey is my top opened email subject line across the board for like myself and all my clients, because it sparks curiosity. It sparks interest. You're like, hey, what's going on? Or like, hey, oh, like that's something I would send to my friend, right? Like that's something I would send to my friend and say, hey girl. And then be like, wait, what's going on? Right? So I highly recommend conversational based ones as opposed to headline, which is like 3 ways to grow your Instagram. Put that in your preview text. Like that's cool for preview text to give clarification to your subject line. But basically conversational is everything. And then real quickly for click rates, the biggest thing is that, and this is a huge debate within the email community of like, do you do multiple CTAs or do you do one CTA? Through my extensive research, I highly recommend one, mainly because you're not giving people too many options. Like I remember one time I accidentally, which never usually happens, but I accidentally got double booked for 2 different events and they were free. Like I was just participating and I was just like, well, I'm going to go to neither because I literally spent 15 minutes like heads or tailing on Google trying to figure out which one I should go to. And so may not be for everybody, but for me and for a lot of, people in the audiences that I work with, it's just easier to have one CTA and even focus on linking in your text. Don't wait until the button to link. Link your stuff. Anytime you mention the name of your program, mention, your podcast, link to it, like go ahead and link to it. So that they're like, oh, the podcast. Oh, okay. They'll click on over to it, even if the main CTA is to go check out your YouTube channel, right? Always link whatever you mention. That's like a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, I love that. And I 100% agree with you. It's funny because I never heard the statistic before about, when it comes to the open rate on email, 50% of it is relationship. Duh, makes so much sense. And then the other 50% is the subject. Now, you would like to think that the majority of the time is just to do with the subject. Like, no. It is the relationship. And I agree with you what you're saying. And I love how you put it together because if you don't show up consistently and start building that relationship, then yes, the figures are going to start going down. And yes, people are not going to start opening up your email. So 50% is definitely the relationship building, which means staying consistent, giving value, giving great content. And then the other 50% then is obviously just relying on the subject. And I always use open-ended questions, make it very conversational. I did make the mistake of putting in the titles or the subjects and things like that, especially for my podcasts. And then I was like, oh, people are not opening up my podcast episodes. Oh, let me change the question. Let me change it to an open-ended question. Let me change the subject line. And then people started opening it up. And then obviously when they realized it's a podcast, then the click rate started picking up. Again, the click rate, one call to action is so much better because if you give people too many options, they're going to go, oh, too many options, I'm not going to be bothered. And they literally go into paralysis analysis, as you call it. So just give them one call to action. That is where people actually start going, oh, I'm curious, let me go and check it out. Give them too many questions or too many options, they'll go like, don't have time for this. I can't look at all 3. Let me just go and look at one. So just give them one option and you'll be very surprised that people will go and click on that. So oh my gosh, I love this conversation. I could talk about email marketing forever.
Oh my gosh, same here.
No, Ashley, I think this is amazing, and I think just from what you've said here, I think overall, for those of you listening or watching this video, just grasp the concept. If you haven't started with email marketing yet, or if you're in the stages of email marketing, but you're not consistent, you haven't had a good open rate, your email list is still small, that is okay. Everybody starts at 0, okay? Everybody has to learn. But what you can do now is you can take these tips and take the advice that Ashley is giving you here today, and you can make a start on it. You can start growing your email list. You can start that conversation and really build the relationship with your people. You'll be so surprised at what an effect that could have, not just for you and your audience and the relationship, but also for your business. It could really swing things around. But you've got to be consistent and you've got to give it a go. Nothing will happen if you don't make it happen. However, with that said, Ashley is going to help you out. Oh my gosh, I was so excited when she said she's going to help you out. So for those of you listening or watching this video, Ashley is going to be able to help you with your emails. So Ashley, why don't you tell us what you're going to be able to do for the audience if they reach out to you?
Yeah, totally. So one of the biggest things that I found is that everybody's in a different spot. But one of the biggest things is that, sometimes what gets us most in the way is the content piece of figuring out what do I actually say in my emails? What is the strategy behind it? And really taking what we've learned today and applying it to how you actually implement it. And so you have the opportunity, if you'd like, I set up a Google form for you to be able to submit over 4 of your emails for me to review. So I'll go through them. I'll send you a Loom video back with some feedback, with some comments, just to really help you take that next step. And so you can either send me a DM over on Instagram at Ashley DeLuca, and just let me know you'd like to link, or you can also pop into the show notes as well for this podcast to grab the link as well. Totally free, no charge, just as long as you actually take it and implement it. That's the only thing I ask.
I know, and I love that. And thank you so much for making that available, because this is not one of those standard freebies, PDFs that you go and download, audio. This is actually Ashley taking your emails, looking at them, telling you what you need to correct so that you can start building this relationship, so that you can start building this engagement. So just go and do it. I mean, honestly, the link will be below in my show notes. Go and click on it now. If you're struggling with creating the content in your email, you don't know how, you don't know if this is correct, and you're scared to take that first try, oh my gosh. If I had Ashley the first time I created my emails, I would have sent her more than 4 emails. No, I really appreciate it. Ashley, thank you so much for making that available. What we're also going to do is below in the show notes, Ashley's Instagram account details will be there. So you can go and stalk her, connect with her, ask any questions there in the DM. And her website details will also be there. So you can go and check her out and see what else she's up to. But Ashley, I just wanted to say thank you so, so much. Really, really appreciate your time for being here. Before we go, do you have one last little tip that you want to share with the audience?
Oh my gosh, there are so many tips that I could share. I think the biggest thing is that be prepared for the failures. Be prepared to fall flat on your face. And this is for business in general as well, not just with email. But like, be prepared to fight to the death for what you believe in. Be prepared to just go all in and realize that you may need a box of tissues for the ride. But the view on the other side of, you know, your success and what you're moving towards and what you're building is totally worth it.
Oh, couldn't have said it better myself. No, I appreciate it. And thank you so much for coming on. And you and I will be in touch very soon again. So enjoy the rest of the day. We'll speak soon.